Welcome to the One Life Podcast with Behka White. This is episode 76, Sympathy and Empathy. So, what is the difference between sympathy and empathy? I'm so glad you asked. Sympathy is feeling sorry for someone. Empathy is feeling sorry with someone. Empathy is connection. Years ago, I was shopping with my cartload of kids. Actually, it was just my 2-year-old and 4-year-old, but these two were both wild cards, meaning you never know how the day is going to go until you throw those two in the mix. Anyway, I had a cartload of groceries and everything in it with Ty, my 2-year-old, sitting strapped in the front of it. I turned my head to grab something, and Talia, my 4-year-old, popped a wheelie in with that cart and landed it face down on the handlebars. I still don't know how Ty didn't lose all of his teeth on the play. Anyway, my 2-year-old is screaming. My 4-year-old is screaming for good measure. All 24 eggs are oozing down the row with all the other items. And a woman slowly passes by, pushing her cart, eyeing all that is happening. She looks at me and she says, "It looks like you are having a bad day." And she just keeps right on walking, pushing her cart slowly down the aisle, away from the eggs, away from my screaming kids, and away from my chaos. In my judgmental disbelief, I would have called this a less-than-sympathetic response. Contrast that with this experience. When Mariah was about 2 and was barely talking, one Sunday we walked into church a few minutes early. There was a woman sitting alone a few rows in front of us whom we hadn't met, and Mariah noticed her when we had walked in. Mariah patted my arm and said, "Mama, she need a hug." "Oh," I said, "I think you're right. Why don't you go give her a hug?" My super shy 2-year-old tentatively walked up to the woman, and they both looked at each other for a second, and then Mariah reached out and gave her a hug. The woman responded and hugged her back. Mariah came back with her face just beaming. So how did Mariah, just 2 years old, know that that woman needed a hug? I call this empathy. Mariah recognized sorrow or sadness and moved into comfort in her own way. Sympathy requires us to notice and to allow ourselves to feel sorrow or pity for someone at a comfortable distance. Empathy requires us to show up emotionally and be in the discomfort with the suffering, because that is where connection occurs. I know for myself, for many years, I had boundaries around my heart that would not allow me to get to empathy. I could feel sympathy from a safe distance, but I did not trust the strength of my emotional self to show up and hold space for suffering. But I mean, as a parent, this is what we do all day, every day. And now, as a chaplain, I do it for my patients. Like so many other attributes of goodness, empathy is not a trait that one possesses or does not possess, but it is a skill that can be learned. So the invitation today is to practice empathy. Practice showing up and holding space. This is how we connect with people in suffering, and this is the only way to get better at it. There are people who need your unique love, and they need you to show up for them. And when we do this, we are doing God's work. There is nothing more sacred and humbling than holding space for another human in suffering. Not to solve it, not to fix it, just to witness, and so they don't suffer alone. Until next time, keep living your best life.